and I'm here with
DANK.
And we also have a special guest here with us, John. But we're here on the front lines in the battle against the deep state cabal, the Illuminati, and all those that want to, treat us as batteries for their own entertainment, and their total disregard for our being human. So let's get started with this. Any before we get anything, Tank, do we have any other news that we need to discuss in the beginning of a new week?
Well, just to kind of set up and introduce John, who's on the phone. I will say that John just called in. He is someone who's an extension of the Creators Network. He works with one of our other very trusted members, whose name I'm not going to say, just to avoid making anyone a target. And I've known about John for some time because John is doing some of the most cutting-edge research potentially in the medical world, in the entire world. And we're going to see how much he wants to talk about. I want to be a little bit sparing with my comments to make sure that, whatever he talks about, we allow him to share. We know that there is a history, right, that, and we know that there's an attack right now that's taking place on all of us. And whether you have children or not, the vaccines that are currently being put out and imposed right now, in Washington and California and New York, Florida now is just joined in with they're forcing this retinal, stigmatization of some sort that they're doing with babies 48 hours old, which is ridiculous, being that their eyes are completely underdeveloped. There's no reason to do this. So I imagine the purpose is nefarious, like Clockwork Orange kind of nefarious. And, we are under an attack, a very real attack, which is designed to limit our functionality, designed to limit our abilities, designed to suppress our natural latent power. In addition to that, it's also designed to commit massive acts of genocide and create a lifespan which is very controlled. And in this process, they have introduced all types of disease that I'll say legally, we would say that they are uncurable diseases. And the reason why I say that is because they have made it illegal to cure things like cancer, like AIDS. You're not allowed to say that there's a cure. Because in the medical industry, in the pharmaceutical world, they don't want you to cure anything. They want to be able to treat your disease so they can manage your health, so they can manage your potential, manage what you know, understand, and are capable of, right? And one of the sure ways to do this is to introduce all types of long-term diseases that are deadly, that diminish your health slowly over time, as the AMA describes it, the long, slow death process. So with that in mind, John is a vanguard in the sense that he has discovered some amazing, miraculous things. And John, are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
So John, what do you want to tell us today? And use your judgment. We completely support you. We are already in the works with John to make sure that his research is not buried by the FDA, because it has already been buried once by the FDA. We're already discussing plans of action to make sure that research is not buried, so that John is safe, and that the potentially millions of people that he will help are also safe. So I just want to put that out there, John, just as a caveat, so all of the special interest groups who would seek to hurt you are aware that we've already put things in place. So go ahead, John. Sorry.
Well, let me start by saying that when I got out of college, I was a pharmaceutical salesman. I worked for two of the biggest pharmaceutical companies still in existence today. And this is one way that I learned about the pharmaceutical industry, about research, and about the sales of products. Of course, they don't sell pharmaceuticals the way I did back in the 1960s. What they do is they advertise on TV. For 15 seconds, they tell you how wonderful this new drug is and what it will do for you. And then the last 45 seconds of the 1 minute commercial is consumed by all the side effects, all the things that it will do to you, what might happen to you, the reactions you might get, and oh, by the way, you may die. So things are entirely different today. But about 20 years ago, I came west, and I've been out here twice now, a total of 45 years. And I started to look at natural medicines because all pharmaceuticals come from natural medicines of some sort, herbs, whatever. And so I started studying herbs, and Native Americans out here know a lot about herbs. They've been curing themselves for years. And so I became friends with a lot of different medicine men. And I would take the product and I would, first of all, test it for toxicity. And then I would try to figure out a method that I could, because herbs are slow at reacting, I tried to figure out a method to deliver it to the system, to the blood system rapidly. I'll skip over a lot of the first research projects and get to where I had a Dr. Sylvia Lee Hagen in New York University study my product. At that time, she was the foremost researcher in HIV, and she was studying melon from China at that time. When she did the study on my product, she found something very interesting, and I asked her on the phone to explain to me just exactly what you mean in layman's language, because while I do have a scientific background, I'm certainly not as versed as her. She basically told me that the way my product works is somehow I've been able to alter it, and by the way, that is a trade secret. I didn't apply for a patent because patents are stolen every day.
Very wise, very wise.
So anyway, she studied it, and she said that basically what happens is my product gets into, it's ingested, it's in liquid form, it gets into the bloodstream. It's the molecule that I've created is too big to get into a normal cell, but it does get into a fractured cell or infected cell, such as HIV. It gets inside and it shuts down, it coats the inside, it shuts down the ribosomes so they cannot function and continue to grow the cancer or the HIV or whatever we're after, the disease that we're trying to eliminate. So it's shut down and eliminated from the body because it's eradicated. And I said, what do you mean by eradicated? She says, well, it kills the cancer cells or it kills HIV cells, and then the body eliminates them. And in its place, it causes the immune system to put in antigens that remain in the bloodstream and protect you from getting reinfected. Unlike the treatments today for cancer where they may put you in remission, most doctors don't tell the patient, but usually in a few years it comes back, and it comes back 100-fold. So therefore, we have a product that can go in and actually eradicate the virus. And recent studies by researchers, many feel that...
Hey, John, let me just, I just want to recap what you just said.
Yes,
Okay, so essentially, what you're saying is that you have taken what started out as an herbal cure, which are often very slow. You have enhanced that molecule, much in the same way pharmaceuticals are enhanced. But in this case, you created a selective molecule. It's selective because it will not fit into a normal cell, but it will fit into a fractured cell, including the cells of AIDS and cancer, or HIV and cancer. And it has the ability to naturally take these and have the body eliminate them from the body without doing any other damage to the natural function of the body. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's the research that I've done shows absolutely no side effects. You have to understand that people with HIV at times are taking 40 pills a day. And one of the first people that received the product was basically on his deathbed in Florida and about to receive a $10,000 interferon injection as his last note. He called and asked me for the magic bullets. I sent them to him overnight, and he went from having 800,000 plus copies per milliliter of blood plasma to less than 50 in 90 days. And today he's still walking around 10 years later, completely without any HIV, even though the gentleman has taken a new partner who is HIV positive. So he can't get reinfected because the antigens that are in his blood.
Wow.
So okay, now just to reiterate what you just said, which is absolutely amazing. Not only does it eliminate the HIV cells over there, it then sounds like what we would call, it sounds like it immunized him from contracting the virus again.
This is true.
Okay. Now, let me ask you a question about this because you brought up 2 points along the way, and I think we should just mention them. Now, you talked about with cancer. Now, you said that, when people get treated for cancer, this is the chemotherapy and radiation therapy, that this actually puts them in a cycle because this actually destroys all the cells in the body, including the cells that would ultimately work to help the body recover. So, therefore, it puts them in a state where they're much more prone to have this cancer spread, and now it comes back over and over again, and thus allows the oncology departments to repeatedly have clients that keep coming back to get the same $40,000 a day treatment to essentially, in another 5 years, they'll come back with cancer that'll be, you said, 100 times worse. But let's just say that it's significantly increased, a new form of cancer. Thus, they never say that you're free of cancer. They just say that it's in remission. Is that fairly accurate?
That's right. That's why they use in remission, and basically the products that they use, they weaken the immune system to where it cannot produce its own antigens to fight the cancer.
Right.
Can I ask?
It disrupts the natural apoptosis of the body, and it would naturally regenerate cells. So the cancer cells naturally form because they realize, well, there's not another cell like me, so to speak. So they kind of create more and more cancer that are devouring each other essentially and weakening the body, causing atrophy in the muscles, and ultimately causing the body to fail after, sometimes several treatments, depending on the baseline health when someone started. So in this case, though, with this product, the way you described it, this would be a selected molecule that would go in and just look at damaged cells that do not belong in the body and are causing this disease to take place. And from there, it actually maintains a stronger, more optimum version of health for that individual, even 10 years later with a patient where, as far as anyone knows, there is no cure for HIV or AIDS. But you're talking about resuscitating someone from their deathbed.
Yes, quite a few people have had that experience. And I did a study in Côte d'Ivoire, that's the Ivory Coast, with the medical officials there. And everybody that got the product, they basically are HIV-free today. And that research came back to me in French, and I don't speak French, so I had to have it interpreted. But that's basically what it said. But the FDA stole that research. It's supposedly sitting in Kansas City at the FDA offices, being held for the time when I will come up with $1.7 million to get my product approved, which is in their genre, it's pretty cheap, considering all the pharmaceutical companies say it costs $600 million today to get a product approved.
Well, yeah, and I would bet my liver they would never let you have it for $1.7 million.
No, what they'll do is they'll ask me to complete another study and another study and another
Right.
study. It'll never see the market, but it's not for the market. It's for the people that need it. It's from the creator who created it.
Hey, I've got a question.
Creator.
Okay.
I'm just a messenger.
Whew. Now, John, let me ask you a question, man.
I've got a question too. So whenever.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dan. You ask your question.
All right. Did you say that cancer is based around a virus?
I said that the recent research, there are many researchers who feel that that is a possibility, that a virus does cause different types of cancer. Now that hasn't been proven, but they don't they don't really know for sure one way or the other. But I find that my product is an antiviral product.
Right. That's
And
what I
if
was
it
going to ask.
works against cancer, then
Yes.
one could maybe assume that the possibility of cancer being caused by a virus is pretty high.
I think you're right.
Yeah, no,
sounds like
you're absolutely right. And there's actually a book that was published in 1958 called Elohim, the Archetype Original Pattern of the Universe. And it actually written by Dr. Henry Clifford Kinley, where he defines cancer as a virus. And it talks about how it spreads within the body exactly the way a virus does. So they know full well it's a virus. Matter of fact, in the actual vaccines, they define it, leukemia, as the leukemia virus. So they are very well aware that it is a virus. They're just denying it so they can, allow people to think that it's not communicable or things like that. Yeah. Very interesting. Okay. So now, John, so in this study you did in Africa of the, that was stolen by the FDA, how many approximately people do you think participated in that study?
There were over 7,000 people in that study.
Wow.
The unfortunate part of that study was that the South African that took it there for me, whose father was a representative at the UN, he decided to profit off of it, and he started selling some of the product for his own gain. So even though I got the study, after the study I discovered that he had made somewhere in the neighborhood of $150,000 in about 30 days off of it by charging $5,000 treatment. That's still cheap in the medical world, but we don't charge for it. We do not charge for it.
John, so you have what we're not going to call the cure, but you have the ability to return someone with HIV or AIDS and potentially cancer. And obviously there's consideration for various other pathogenic diseases that would stand to reason, the viruses that this would treat as well. And your product, based on the research you've done, you're saying that you have this, and not only do you have it, but you're giving it away for free, correct?
Yes, I've been very fortunate in my life. I'm out here. I've been in the mining business, turquoise, precious metals, and being a servant of the Lord, I've been blessed greatly by Him, and so I have a nonprofit organization that I do it through, but it's pretty quiet because of the attention that it draws from people who report to the pharmaceutical companies.
I understand, of course, yeah. So this is a common practice for anybody out there who doesn't realize this. We talk about this often, that we have cures within our network. John is living proof of this. But we have, well, we're not allowed to call it a cure though, right? Because God forbid we actually get rid of a disease.
Well, you know what, I called this episode "Cancer Be Gone."
Cancer be gone, yeah. So yeah, so we could call it a treatment, and I'm sure that there's a terrifying thing taking place, John, and I'm sure you're aware of it now. This is kind of the fight that we're in.
Uh-oh.
Yes, sir.
He faded out. I don't know. Sometimes it gets muted or another call comes in.
No, I'm here. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So, John, there's a very real fight going on right now, right? So, what you're doing is you're presenting an option that actually disrupts the other side significantly. It's a weapon of health, right? It's a health weapon to restore people. Now, there is a young lady, mother, who has an 11-year-old daughter up in the Seattle area, and her 11-year-old daughter had a round of chemotherapy that did not reduce the tumor size at all. So she was diagnosed with cancer. The chemotherapy did not reduce the tumor at all. A year later, the mother decided to go with a holistic options, and I'm not sure what those are, but you can imagine with an 11-year-old, it's going to be a challenge. But a year later, the mother reduced the tumor size by 85% in about a year. And they came and they wanted her daughter to go into another round of chemotherapy, which obviously that sounds like a medical economy decision rather than a human decision. And because the mother would not submit to that because her daughter was doing so well without chemotherapy, they came and they took that woman's daughter from her and forced her to do the chemotherapy and then put the woman in jail.
Mercy.
It's tragedy, right?
Mercy.
So
that's amazing.
So, my thought, John, is I'm very much holding the courts in contempt. I hold the Child Protective Services in contempt. I hold the FDA in contempt. These are all private organizations that are currently have convinced everyone that they are a government organization, when in fact they're not. As a matter of fact, they don't have any regulatory control. What they have is fear control, right? And they can dictate to people what is happening. And in reality, what you have is a private organization stole your research, and now they're burying it for economic reasons. And that is a tragedy. Now, John, let me ask you, you have some research that you said you just completed. You mind talking about that?
Well, I want to keep that pretty private, but I'll just say that we did a recent study with the university. We have several universities that want to study our product. You sign a non-disclosure with them, and you ask them to keep the research private. So that's hard to do, especially when you get results like we recently got. We did a double-blind study on 40 women with newly diagnosed with breast cancer. Can you imagine that a beautiful woman has to lose her breast because of cancer? Wow, what a tragic thing. But anyway, we provided the product for a 40-person study, and a little more because sometimes they spill or something happens. So the study took only 30 days, and in 30 days, all those small tumors, the lesions, the cancer in the blood were completely eliminated. And the study also showed that there were 51 million new immunocells in the body from taking the product. At the same time, there were two women who were advanced age that had brain tumors. They were apparently wives of the very wealthy contributor to the university. They got the leftover product, and their tumors were shrunk and completely disappeared, and they are cancer-free today.
So, John, basically, you have a product. I can't repeat this enough times. You have a product that, at very best, you look at it as an antiviral that will go in and treat the virus. And when you've already done extensive studies that have addressed cancer. I mean, this study is a little small study, but it's obviously done in the true pharmaco guidelines where you're doing a double-blind study where you have a placebo group and an active group, and neither group knows which one they are. And then you have another instance where you've done studies in Africa, which sounds like it was on-site, a live study of 7,000 plus people. But you have a product that will go in. It is selective, as in it selectively attacks it's a selective molecule that selectively attacks the actual virus itself. And then on top of that, and then it will eradicate that from the system. And then one of the side effects that we have to worry about is that it might also reduce the size of the tumor, right? So
Yes, sir.
that's pretty incredible. And even the research you had done before, the FDA is sitting on, and apparently the FDA thinks it's okay to release known toxins to our infants, but a cure, or God forbid we call it a cure they can't release, but something that has the ability to return someone to optimal health, they will not release. In fact, they have stolen it from you, and they want to charge you for it, even though you had. Can I mention what you said about the court? Is that okay, or about 1,700?
Yeah, they basically raided me at my office, and they raided the production facility in Southern California where I had it made, and they threatened them with $300,000 fine. They took me before the courts, and when I went for the first hearing, the courtroom was full of people, mostly wearing orange. I was fortunate. I was dressed like a man, normal man, and my attorney told me, well, you'll be heard first because it's just simply a recitation of what you supposedly have done, which is interstate transportation of an unlicensed drug. I shipped it,
Right. In other words, you used FedEx to ship some herbs that you didn't have to
whatever.
diagnose as a drug, right?
But what happened basically was that everybody in that courtroom was heard, and it was all done. It was 5 minutes to 12. I sat there all that time. I never got called. They dismissed everybody. And when we came back at 1 o'clock, I was the only person in there. So there was no news reporters, nothing. It was done quietly. And then after the fight was over, and they took me before a federal judge, they took me not anywhere near I lived, but 3 hours from where I lived. They took me to a courthouse on the 3rd floor, and the only people in the courthouse were the judge, her protector, the prosecuting attorney, excuse me, myself and my attorney, and they fined me and put me out of business for about 3 years, where I couldn't do anything, help anybody. But I got through that without any problem, and I'm still helping people because that's my mission. That's the mission that I serve the Lord with. I give it to people that need it. I'll give everything that I have till I have nothing to help people.
John, I couldn't be more proud that you're in our network, and I can't wait to fully fund everything you're doing while we simultaneously launch a absolute legal assault on the FDA for suppressing not only this but many other things, and certainly what I consider to be unethical practice in the medical world, because there should never be a time that something like this has been kept secret. It is absolutely astounding what you have done. I'm just in awe by it.
Well, Trump put out this right to try, right, so that even the experimental, quote unquote, drugs would be available for people to try. So why isn't this also something people could try?
Well, basically, you have to fill a criteria. Number one is the patient has to get a written permission from the doctor. Then that permission has to go to the FDA, and you have to be on their list of approved experimental drugs in order to qualify to fill their need. So that wouldn't happen in my case because they're suppressing my product. And while the FDA takes money from the pharmaceutical companies who actually absolutely support them and control them, they also took close to $1 billion from the cartel on phony applications to approve the use of drugs like cocaine, et cetera, through the FDA. So, I mean, they're dirty, and that's all there is to it.
Right.
And
the way go ahead.
I'm sorry. You mentioned that Pfizer had offered to basically buy this from you so that they could put it on the shelf and bury it, right?
Right.
And that's when you shut the deal down because you realized they weren't going to actually put it out to people.
Yeah, because I wasn't really in it for the money. I mean, I was going to take the money they gave me and work on another product which I've actually been working on, which is a nerve that has been proven locally here, used on rug weavers. You know how the Navajo people weave rugs? They're very beautiful, 2 gray hills, all these beautiful rugs that they make on the reservation. Well, over time, many of the ladies have lost their sight. Well, there's a new herb that I've been studying that you make eye drops out of it, and you drop it into their eyes. And I recently saw a woman who couldn't weave anymore receive this treatment via her medicine man, even though we created it and bottled it. And she sees again, and she just sold a $10,000 rug to Richardson's trading company and trading post in the town where we live. So there's many things that are available. I've got at least a half a dozen items that there's even a new one that I've seen used on an Alzheimer's patient who actually responded immediately, and his mind was absolutely cleared, and he could remember people's names again that he lived with. What a wonderful thing to get some university or some big company to study that.
Right.
Well, I mean, I would avoid that first off, but I do have some smaller companies that you use. But
well, that's what I mean. Some company that you know.
Yeah, and I would say that that sounds to me like it's a selective agent to dissolve calcification that builds up. It causes the inflammatory condition that leads to Alzheimer's and the various kind of plaque that builds up in our arteries around our hearts. It's all relative. So that's interesting. That's very interesting.
We have a heart product. It's been proven. It's an herbal liquid that will absolutely dissolve all the plaque in your veins and your arteries in 3 days.
What?
Whoa!
Absolutely. Been proven.
Oh my gosh.
The heart surgeon that saw it said, in England, said, I'll write you a check for that, whatever it is. I said, well, wait a minute, aren't you a heart surgeon? He said, yeah, but imagine, I could probably charge as much for that as I do an open heart surgery.
right, with no damage, no damaging scar tissue formed or
No
right,
recovery.
stress, no recovery. I mean, hey, just take this, call me in the morning. That's amazing. That's amazing.
I've actually given it to friends Christian friends that I work projects with, and they've been put on the machine, and they've actually seen where all the plaque was gone. And the big question that came up was, okay, wait a minute, if you can do it in 3 days, doesn't that plaque get into the heart and cause a heart attack? No, because it dissolves it. It just dissolves it to nothing.
So this is really transmuting the various contaminants in the body, which cause all disease. All disease is blockage on some level, right? I mean, either on a microvascular level or in other ways, pretty much on some level, So this is not. It's actually transmuting it back into substance the body recognizes as waste. It doesn't cause large chunks of this plaque to break off the artery, which could cause stroke. It's just taking I guess like heavy doses of B vitamins can do that. So this is actually dissolving it naturally, right back in the bloodstream in a healthy way.
It's like drinking 3 glasses of tea a day for 3 days. Period.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible, John. That is incredible.
Yeah, but just think of it's just like when I went to San Francisco with my HIV product, and Dr. Lee at the USFC, University of California, San Francisco, did his study. He found that my product worked 100% of the time. He decided that, and had already applied to the National Institute of Health, and he got $1 million grant, moved to La Jolla and opened his own clinic. But he forgot to that the University of Southern California had rights to his studies. He had taken the disc, and if you go back to that time and look in the Wall Street Journal, 30 days after he opened his clinic, he was sued by the university for stealing intellectual property and put out of business. But he was one of maybe 4 doctors that called me telling me that they were going to win the Nobel Peace Prize with this product because it just always worked. It never failed in their studies. So you can imagine. All the heart surgeons are going to shoot me because they don't want this product. They don't want me to be able to give the Lord's medicine to the people and have their veins and arteries cleaned that fast.
John, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to make sure because the name and in the vein and in the spirit of what you're doing all this in, we are not going to allow anyone to take credit for what you've done. I know you don't want credit either. I can tell by the way you are.
I can't take credit. It's you have to.
But John, listen. You're talking about God. I can't put God's name on the ballot for the Nobel Peace Prize. Look, He put you here. He's using you.
Oh no, we're not interested. We're only interested in making a difference in people's lives. This is when God created women and men, He gave their body the ability to cure itself.
That's
We're
right.
only giving them something to help the immune system do that job.
Okay, John, I am just so happy that you came on to talk to us tonight. Dan, if it's okay with you, I'd really like to keep this short because there's a couple things safety-wise I want to talk to John about right after this call. So I think that this is something that should go viral. I think this should be shared with everybody you know. Yeah. Please, anybody out there, all the agents who are sitting there listening, I just want to put this in your mind right now. Rather than take action to go tell your handler right now and how you need to suppress somebody, just consider that you have a heart too, that cancer could affect you, that AIDS can affect you as well, and we're talking to someone who has the ability to fix that for you If you don't see the humanity in getting that out, then you don't deserve to be on this planet, period. We need to get this out. We need to get the message out. We need to make sure that the FDA is held accountable for suppressing things like this. This cannot happen anymore. So, John, if you don't mind, I want to end the call now, Dan, if that's okay with you.
That's fine. And thank
Sure.
you for your time. And God bless everybody. And God bless the USA.
God bless the USA, indeed.
And Tank, I'm going to give you a call after we're done.
Okay, cool. All right, everybody, have a great night.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you, John.